Welcome back. A major shift in policy governing certain man-made chemicals found in water across the nation. The Environmental Protection Agency this week releasing new standards, finding PFAS is much more dangerous than previously known. The new guidelines set the accepted health risk thousands of times lower than the current standard, both nationally and in Wisconsin. Now, I am joined by Laura Schulte, who covers PFAS extensively at the Journal-Sentinel. Laura, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me today.
So I think the first question here is, how enforceable are these new federal standards?
Yeah, these new federal standards are quite a change from the standards that, the Obama administration put into effect in 2016. For PFOA and PFOS, which are two of the most common PFAS chemicals in that family, the new health limit standards are under 1 part per trillion. That's less than 1 drop of water in an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Which, by thousands of times lower, what the EPA is basically saying here is there is almost no safe level unless it's so close to zero that it's basically indistinguishable. So just how serious of a message is that?
That's a pretty serious message, and it's a big shift, down from 70 parts per trillion, to this very, very non-detect limit, very, very low non-detect limit.
And always good to back up here and remind viewers, what is it that makes these chemicals so dangerous?
Yeah, PFAS are really dangerous to us because they're so pervasive in our environment. They've been used in a lot of products throughout the years, non-stick pans, non-staining carpet or furniture, your rain gear, if it is, waterproof or water resistant. It's even in wrappers for fast food. So Culver's has some wrappers that have PFAS in them. And when they get into the environment, they stay there for a really long time. And it's a similar situation in your body. They stay in your body for a really long time, and it's hard to get them out.
So these chemicals have been incredibly politicized in Wisconsin. It was, in fact, just a day or so before the EPA's announcement this week that Wisconsin finally agreed to even adopt the old federal standard. So what comes next for the state?
So as of yesterday, the new standards are upheld. The legislature didn't take any action to block them. So what happens next? We're waiting for the Secretary of the DNR, Preston Cole, to sign those 2 rules, and then they'll sit in an administrative review for about a month. And if there's no objection, everything goes smoothly, those will become law mid-July. And then according to the DNR spokesperson, Sarah Hoy, about 4 months after those rules going into effect, large water systems, over 50,000 people, will be required to start testing for PFAS in their water supply. And then about 10 months later, small systems will be required to start testing for PFAS in water.
What are the reactions that you're hearing in communities who either support or oppose better PFAS regulations?
For communities who have been asking for lower standards, this is really, really good news. They were really excited about what this means, even though it doesn't address groundwater, which is a big concern here in Wisconsin. And then from other groups, some chemical groups, they're concerned about what this will do and whether or not the EPA followed the correct processes for vetting their scientific methods for setting these health action limits.
Now, you've done quite a bit of reporting on PFAS found in wells and cities around Wisconsin. So just briefly describe for me, what's the landscape right now about where we know it exists in our drinking water?
There are 97 places in Wisconsin where we know we have PFAS issues. Madison, for example, Wausau is another big one. The Marinette and Peshtigo area, Eau Claire, La Crosse. And those were all areas with limits above 70 parts per, with the testing found PFAS above 70 parts per trillion. But what we're seeing now through some voluntary sampling being done by the DNR is that a lot of communities in Wisconsin have PFAS in their wells above these new health action limits. So it remains to be seen what kind of action is going to be taken by the state or individual communities. But what we do know is that the federal government has a lot of money available to address this issue right now through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act that passed last year.
All right. Anything we missed that you'd like to add?
So the federal government can't come into a community and say that you have to deal with PFAS in the well water. So these are just health action limits that say, maybe this water is unsafe and you need to figure out a way to address this contamination.
All right, Laura, as always, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We will be right back.